I'm going to let people know that we're recording just for note-taking support purposes.
Okay, okay, that might be valuable, actually.
We're just going to give it a few more minutes. We know we're aware of the time, but we also want to make sure folks have a chance to sign on.
Well, and we don't have a quorum by any means.
I know that.
Yeah.
It
Not
doesn't
yet.
mean, it doesn't mean we can't have a conversation if that occurs, which was not part of the plan. It
I
just,
see.
we can't make a recommendation.
I see. Okay.
Craig just joined, which is great. And I don't know who's dialed in on the phone, if that is Titian.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Craig. Thank you for joining. We're hoping we get one more committee member on. I know Gary was going to join us. And Titian was going to try and call in.
Okay, great.
Hey, Craig.
Yeah, and I'll try to get on through my computer. I'm just having some issues.
Who is it?
Her name is Maggie McGill.
I'll just let folks know as you're joining, we haven't started yet, so you haven't missed anything. And we are recording tonight, just so we have a chance to make sure we capture accurately and completely everyone's input. So thank you for your understanding and support.
There's Gary. Hi,
Awesome.
Gary.
That makes our quorum.
We have a quorum. Good.
Fabulous.
Mm.
Thank you. In light of the time, which is I show now 7:05, I'd like to suggest we get started. And obviously, we welcome more participants if and as they join. Let me begin. My name is Terry Lee, and let me begin by welcoming everybody tonight. We really appreciate your interest and participation. I want to acknowledge, first of all, for the committee members, I see Nona, Gary, Craig, myself, Terry, and I know our council rep, I see John Richards on as well. So we're appreciative of all of your participation, and we're appreciative of the community members who have joined us as well. Before we begin, I also wanted to acknowledge, and I'm happy if anyone wants to chime in, that one of our colleagues earlier this year recently passed away. And I believe he was a neighbor and friend of many, maybe almost all, because as a longtime resident of Portola Valley.
Who's that?
That's Chip McIntosh.
Oh, that's too bad.
And I wanted to acknowledge specifically his longstanding and selfless service to the Open Space Committee. But I also am well aware that he was a volunteer in many other capacities in our town and in the larger community. We thought it was very important to recognize his service and his passing. And I wanted to just say that. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment, but I at least wanted to put that on the record.
Terry?
Yeah,
I probably have known Chip as long as anybody here, but going back into the 90s. I can't remember the first committee. I know he has been with the Open Space Committee for decades. He was also on the Planning Commission. One of his outstanding accomplishments was as a member of the committee that was gathered to raise funds for the new town center. And he would do things such as on Sundays, jump on his bicycle and he'd ride up somebody's driveway and knock on their door and ask for money. And he would do that on Sundays. So he was really one of our chief fundraisers, but he did it the way that most of us don't even think about. But that was the way Chip was. And of course, all these years, he's been such a good member. I think he's been the go-to guy when we're sniffing around for properties that might give interest to our committee. So we're certainly missing him, and I'm missing him for many other reasons.
thank you, Gary. Nona?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I just want to note one thing, which is that Chip was equally committed and knowledgeable about affordable housing and open space and didn't see them in conflict. And that's a perspective we really need. So I miss him.
Thank you, Nona. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm going to move into the rest of the agenda. Thank you. The second agenda item is oral communications, and that only pertains to things that aren't already on the agenda. And we do have a number of agenda items under old business and new business. Is there anything from the committee or from the community that isn't on the agenda that anyone would like to make a remark about? You're welcome to raise your hand or just go off mute. I don't see anything, so I'm going to move on. To number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. The last meeting was on February 28th. Thank you, Nona, as always, for drafting and preparing minutes, which were included in the packet. Do any of the committee members have any edits or corrections or additions that they want to recommend? If not,
Actually,
oh yeah, please.
I'm sorry to do this, but I wonder if we could just back up 1 minute to oral communications.
Sure.
because I have something that ties into the minutes, which is that one of the discussions that we'll have tonight indicates that no minutes were available on the town website for that meeting. And I was unaware of that. I looked at the website and I was aghast because we've been very diligent about taking minutes and providing minutes. And when I even went to the agenda packets for the subsequent meetings, I noticed that somehow the agenda page is there, but not the rest of the agenda packet. And so I will hope that the committee can look into this either by appointing a subcommittee at some point. I know for sure that I have all of the minutes because I have all of the agenda packets and every email that Sharon Hanlon ever sent me, and they're archived. So those minutes exist, and I would like to see them back on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Any other edits to the February 28th minutes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve them as drafted.
Yeah, so Terry,
Yes,
I think I'm not on the list of attendees.
okay. Nona? We'll correct that if that's needs to be corrected. Thank you. Any other comments? If there are no other comments, could I entertain a motion to approve them as amended? Oh, Dana has a question or comment about the minutes?
Not about the minutes. It's about, somebody said that they tried to send you guys a message today and you don't have a committee email. So thank you.
Probably just another website glitch at this point. I think the transition to the new website may have scrubbed some things somehow.
We'll make a note of that as part of oral communications. I don't think that involves an amendment to the minutes. Any other comments about the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve them as amended by Craig?
So moved.
Thanks, Craig. A second?
Second,
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? Okay, great. Approved. Wholly. Thank you. And thank you Gary, for your comment about the contact information.
Yeah,
We have a couple of
make a
items.
note. Okay, Ryan, Sue says hi. Now I gotta go through her iPad. See ya, bye. God, I've been on the phone to Apple. Get rid of all, I got 7 antivirus things in a row.
Hey, someone's
Where's your
on,
little old
someone's
phone?
mic is on.
What's on, Sue? Is there a zip?
Someone's
Yeah,
mic is on.
what is it?
Their
you need
Apple
to
product.
mute.
What do you mean?
Housing committee or what?
Open space.
Oh. Okay,
Can we mute if you're
you
not?
want me to get on there? Or do you know how to do it?
I know how to do it.
You should
I'm
mute.
I'm
Mute.
gonna
host
mute-
can mute all.
to
I'm
speak.
gonna mute
Mute all.
people. I'm gonna mute people who are not raising their hand to speak, okay? Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of old business items, which I actually hope will be relatively expeditious, in part because we have a relatively straightforward update on one case and then an update, which isn't a lot on the second item. Under old business, we have worked for an extensive period of time on the open space brochure and map mailer, and we thought we were ready a little while ago, but we got some late input to make it even better. And I wanted to ask, I think Nona, who took the lead on integrating in this late input, to just give us an update on where we're at. I think the latest version is actually in the agenda packet, so that should reflect all the up-to-date inputs, including the most recent ones. Nona, did you want to add any comments?
I think I'd just like to thank everyone who provided input and suggested revisions. The 3 main changes since the last version were some updates to hayfields, including the road remnant next to Frog Pond, which town manager agreed we could do. And the town staff actually asked us to take off Rosati, so we did that. Those are the 3 main changes, and I hope that we're at a point where we can approve it.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee or from the community about those materials?
Yeah, I have a question. Nona, you mentioned Rosati's. I'm trying to
Yes.
remember. what did we have in that, that mentions Rosati's?
Well, it was included on the map with the, and I mean the soccer field. So it was decided that that's not really open space, so we took it off.
Oh, okay.
Any other
Uh,
comments or questions? If there aren't, Nona, can we entertain a motion to have this approved as amended and updated, so that we can move towards posting it and distributing it? Is that fair?
I would love that, but
Okay.
I would rather that someone else make the motion if everyone is,
Alright.
that we're ready to go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to make that motion.
Yeah.
So I move to approve as updated and amended the map and brochure with the updates that Nona just summarized. I'd like to entertain a second.
Second,
Is that Gary?
God, second it, Terry.
Oh, great, Craig, thank you.
Craig,
Thank you, Craig.
do we know who's listening to the baseball game?
Yeah, we're
Do you know
listening.
who's
to
got the
someone.
Yeah,
game on?
everybody needs to mute.
Thank you. Okay, so I moved, Craig seconded. All committee members in favor, aye, please. Aye. We have a unanimous, I think,
Aye.
and no abstentions. Thank you. Thank you, Nona, for your tireless work over way too many months. But I think we've ended up with a better product and more reflective of all the input from our community. So thank you very much for that. I also have under old business other website updates. I want to acknowledge, I believe that Titian was maybe with Craig on lead with that. And I wasn't necessarily anticipating that we had a chance to make much progress there, in part because we were waiting for the map and other materials to be updated first. But I did want to give Titian and Craig a chance to provide any update, if any update was available. And I know that Titian might be detained from joining.
Yeah, I don't have any updates for tonight.
Okay. That is fine. Let's move on. I'm sure we'll be back to that now that we have some updates that we can actually add to the website and build upon. So let's move on to new business, which is, I think, the main agenda items for today. I wanted to note that in the agenda packet, it was a late add by the town clerk and the town manager. There is a memo in there from Jeremy to the committee, giving some additional background on his reasoning or rationale behind his recent recommendation to the finance committee and to the council about funding of maintenance costs for open space. So I wanted to point that out. I'm not going to read the memo into the minutes, but the memo is there. And I also wanted to acknowledge, without conflating the two topics, that new business A and new business B might be somewhat related. They don't necessarily have to be, but that fire mitigation may be a form of maintenance. And I have the impression from town staff that is something that's also on their mind. So before we move on 5A, as I said, there has been a recent discussion with Finance Committee and Council about use of open space funds for maintenance. And I know there's a long history of our committee discussing why that might not be the best use of open space funds. And I wanted to just open up the floor to committee members and or community members on that topic. Any comments, Gary?
Yeah, and Gary, do you know, is this already approved? The council, because I wasn't tracking until, we got it in our packet. So is the council already approved this budget? Or is this still, are they still looking for input from us?
So my understanding.
Maybe John could help answer that, John Richards.
Yeah, John, do you want to comment?
The budget, yeah, the budget has been passed as an interim budget that will be finalized in September.
My understanding, however, John, from Jeremy was that the council had directed staff to look at this particular issue more carefully about the source of funding for open space maintenance. And that part of the budget would be re-reviewed perhaps at that September timeframe by council before anything is finalized on that particular topic.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. I did not mean to make policy.
Not a
It was
problem.
my understanding of what happened at that
How to get out of this.
finance committee meeting, a recommendation to council. So thank you, John.
Yep.
Gary, you raised your hand earlier. Did you want to chime in? You're on mute if you did.
Gary, you're muted.
Lost money.
You'll make it back.
Okay, Gary.
You're muted.
Gary?
See that, my wife is reminding me to get with the program here and unmute. So the question was, I think, John, there's probably some numbers that you would have. What are you talking about in terms of the dollars per year for maintenance that you're asking for?
Gary, in the budget proposal for this year, I believe the number that got penciled in for a few line items was around $112,000.
That's right.
Yeah, so
And that's been pulled out of the original allocation. Yeah.
right. But I hesitate to get into the specifics of that dollar amount because I feel like staff and council were open to us discussing the concept of this use of funds, and more so than is the dollar amount or the specific application that was proposed appropriate or not.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to get an order of magnitude.
Sure. And that was just for the fiscal 23 year. Obviously, that number could be different in subsequent years.
Okay.
Did you have a?
But I would add to that part of the discussion was that it was meant to stay within the 2% raised annually. It would never sort of go to the principle that had already been set aside. I'm not sure that makes it right. We're trying to get all our facts on the table. And that was my understanding, was that it wasn't infinite, but it's still relatively large.
Thank you, Craig. That was my understanding from staff as well, that intent of their recommendation was not to deplete the base funds, but only consider asking for some portion of the addition in any 1 year to be able to allocate some of the maintenance. Other questions or comments? Nona?
I have a few comments. I was hoping Jeremy would be here because I think there's some confusing aspects of the document that he sent. And I'll just mention two of them right now. One is he mentioned the open space fund guidelines that we drafted and that they went to the town council in 2017 and were approved. What he didn't point out is that they were approved unanimously, and that was following a discussion in which the council
know.
was made. I'm sorry, is someone needs to mute, thank you. And
Muted.
so I'm losing, that vote by the council was made after it was made clear by a conversation with Craig Taylor that the money, it would be used only for initial upgrading of properties to a state that we considered was appropriate and would not be used for maintenance. And once that was established, a motion was made to approve the fund guidelines, and it was approved unanimously. So I think the package that Jeremy sent is confusing in two respects. One is that it omits that that was the understanding with which the council approved the guidelines. And the second is that, he states on one page that the council decided to adjust the policy, adopted a policy change that would allow use of the funds to bring a property up to the desired level of use. But that was already part of the fund guidelines that were passed in 2017. So I think just to set the record straight, I would hope that Jeremy could attend one of our meetings so that we can really make this clear. I also wish that we would have had a chance to discuss it with him in detail, and that conservation could have done the same.
Thanks, Nona. He apologizes for not being available today. He's on holiday, and the contribution of his memo was an attempt to provide some information. I think we can consider a start, not a finish. And I think he'd welcome the clarifications or questions. And in my conversation with him, he did not assume or necessarily expect that we would be in a position to a comment about what the council gave us an opportunity to comment based on just one conversation or meeting. And so there's certainly an opportunity for us to follow up, hopefully with him in attendance.
So instead of finishing one show in March 2000,
be able to get further clarification on the context for his recommendation and how we feel about giving additional feedback to council. Okay.
Hey, Terry,
Yeah.
can I make a procedural? I think it's good that we sort of talk generally about staff report, if you will, which is Jeremy's stuff. I think before we get into the committee doing discussion, it's probably appropriate to get public input.
That's great.
And then close public input and then bring it back to the committee, and then we can finish up the discussion. Otherwise, I'm worried that, we'll finish our discussion and then the public will kind of come in and then either we'll not respond to it or we'll have another set of discussion. So I think, usually on, at least at the commission level, we've been pretty good about presenting the staff report, then asking questions, and then getting public input, and then bringing it back to either the commission or the committee. So I think that process works pretty well.
Great, let's do that. Dana has raised her hand. Do you want to comment?
Hi, you guys. I actually wanted to say that I think the people who are not muted are the Chapoos. So you might say that. I mean, you might say Chapoos, mute yourselves. Are they finally muted?
They're muted now. Yeah, I've been
Oh, they're
watching it.
muted. Okay, thank God.
Yeah.
Who knows
Or at
what
least-
was going to happen there?
I mean, Sue is, Team's not.
Okay. And then, I didn't expect it to speak right now, but, Terry, when I heard about the budget, I emailed you and you didn't know anything about it. And so I feel very concerned that in terms of processing, you guys worked hard for years. You made a decision, you put your ideas forward, and then nobody engaged. And nobody from the council engaged you guys in terms of this whole question. So that's kind of my concern is how did this happen without your committee being involved in the decision? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Betsy. Someone
Betsy,
is,
before you start, can you mute him? It's Gene.
it's Jean, okay.
Yeah.
Got
There we
it.
go. Thank you.
Betsy, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Terry and Commissioners. There's so much on the town's plate right now that the confusing elements are everywhere. But one of those that I'd like to bring to this committee's attention is really the need not only for Jeremy's clarifying presence, but also Kara Silver's attention, as she has represented that the steps that the finance department has taken to take these funds and redeploy them to maintenance in spite of your committee's prior and clear 2017 direction and unanimous vote, that it was legal. However, the voters who appeared at the polls to vote on these measures voted according to the language of the ballot initiatives themselves, and I think operating with the precedents. And so as we are following a track that has no precedents, whereas voters went to the polls and voted on the language of the ballot initiative itself, I've personally went back to the one I could easily find. There are two measures out there, and there is no reference to this money being used for maintenance. So I think it's worthy of a comb through so that we have clarity and that we honor the voters' intentions. That's where I think the confusion may lie. And I hesitate myself to redirect funds without taking it back to the voters themselves, if such a misunderstanding exists.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Maria, do you have a comment?
I do. I couldn't find where to put my hand up on this particular screening committee. So
That's all right.
Actually, my question is one that goes back to the very beginning of this meeting, and I don't expect an answer right away, but as a resident, one of the things that I'm having a lot of concern about, I was born in Portola Valley, I've been around for a while, is the definition of open space, and the fact that the Rosati field was taken off the open space map. You know, I remember a few years back learning that Rosati field, quote unquote, open space could be made into a soccer field. I was shocked. I didn't think of that as open space. So that is a question for now and also for moving forward, just because I'm as a resident, I'm a little concerned about the changes in definition of what is open space and how it can be zoned and how long it matters. For one, I'd be really reticent to leave my property to the town with everything I've been seeing the last few years. So that would be a question for clarification moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Can I call on Karen? Karen, do you have a comment? Karen? Karen Askey?
Thanks. Hi, this is Karen Askey. There's two Karens here, so
Oh,
I'm
I'm
never sure, but I do have my last name there. Yeah, thanks. So this is my first open space acquisition meeting, and I just want to reiterate what Dana said is I'm more concerned about the process and the fact that the committee wasn't informed of the change and that the committee was involved in discussing it before it was recommended to council. And like Maria said, I would be very wary now of making donations because it's not clear to me if my donation would be used in the purpose in which it was intended. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Other comments from the community on this particular topic? Christy, did you raise your hand?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay, thank you. I am aware that there are funds from, I believe it's San Mateo County called Obeg3 Funds. And this includes funding for open space, and it might even be for maintenance. I did contact the chair of this committee on June 6th to inform about the Obeg3 funds, and the deadline was July 1st. The next open session for these funds, and it's $18 million that is available, and 70% are usually given to supplemental programs, but the other 30% are for various items such as things that the public is concerned about. It listed that. So I have been in contact with Jeff LeCobb, and there is no flexibility on the application process to get an extension. And we do know that Mary Ann Derwin is on the CCAG board, which got the presentation of this, and she encouraged me to go to this meeting, which I found very interesting. So I think in the future, open space acquisition committee should be attuned to the financing available and make sure that we do fill out the application to get grants and possibly to acquire land for open space, or possibly, I'm not sure, it could be used for maintenance, but maybe I saw a lot of, I looked at the Obeg1 funding and the Obeg2 funding, lots of trails, lots of bike things, open space thought. So we need to really tap into these funds. In fact, somebody said at the meeting, hey, these funds are on the table, and if, don't leave funding on the table, is what was said at that meeting. And I know they're long and laborious to fill out, but if we plan ahead, I think we could use the funds for great things for our town. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Karen, the other Karen?
Yeah, hi, this is Karen Vatra, formerly a welfare committee member. How I recall this came up was when I was a member, I was approached by the finance committee. This was perhaps an option for maintenance and for fire maintenance. And when I think of, I guess I would separate the donations as a personal donation versus the UUT stuff, but is a possibility. But I still think that it's sort of just too early to even have this discussion if we don't have a staff member to clarify all the things in the document. To me, that's very unclear if even that could happen. But I also do think that if you buy something, if it's a house or a car, you're going to have to maintain it. And there should be some sort of appropriate percentage going forward. I don't know what that percentage would be, but that's just something that needs to be considered in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I don't want to mispronounce your name. Magda?
Yes, hi. It's not easy to pronounce. It's Maida.
Maida, thank you.
I wanted, without repeating the process concerns, I wanted to add that it astonishes me that this change in the usage of these funds made it all the way into the budget and before the town council. And as I understand it from John Richards, it was provisionally approved, or I don't know what the exact term is, without any consultation with this committee. I'm a former budgeting person, and I just don't understand how that could happen. Thank you.
Any other comments from the community? Thank you. Okay. Craig, would it be okay to entertain comments or questions from the committee member now?
So I think this is the time when you close the public comment for this item and bring it back to the committee for discussion.
Great. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you to the community for adding your input. We appreciate it very much. And I'd like to open it back up to the committee itself for questions or comments. Any discussion? Craig.
So yeah, I'll add my 2 cents to it. So I agree with the public comments I've heard. Most concerning to me is this process. It feels like a preemptive close, which seems really inappropriate. So I'm not sure. Jeremy's memo said, Terry, that he sent you something and maybe you didn't see it. Even if you didn't see it, the idea that Jeremy wouldn't reach back out and say, hey, I haven't heard from you, we need to move this forward, is what I find troubling. It doesn't seem okay to say, oh yeah, I just kind of tossed it out there, and if nobody says anything, then I can just shoot forward and do what I want. So that's the most troubling part for me, because it just seems like it's sort of fundamentally going against the sort of volunteer nature of the town, which I hold very dear. So I got issues with just that part of the process. And then as Nona was saying, I mean, we've spent a long time crafting that, and I haven't heard the council come back and say, oh yeah, I know we approved this, but now we've changed our mind. So if that's happened, again, from a process point of view, I would hope that they come back and say, look, I mean, here's the issue, here are the things we're trying to accomplish, and this is why we think it's appropriate. So I do find the process really troubling. I'm not saying that we might not want to find some way to fund some of this stuff. I mean, maybe that's what we have to, but this kind of process, I mean, and I think Nona's sort of mentioned this in the past, this is the kind of thing that in some sense sets the Conservation Committee against the Open Space Committee. If the Conservation Committee says, oh, we got $200,000 worth of maintenance we think should get done, and the Open Space Committee is going, oh my God, you're going to drain 200,000 out, sets up a pretty adversarial relationship between two, I think, really critical. Hey, Debbie, could you mute, please? Debbie, Romani, can you mute her? As great as it is to hear music practice. Okay, well, we'll see if it's not muted, but we'll see if it's quiet. I think that's my main comment is. Sorry. I can even recognize what they're trying to play. So Terry, do you have the ability to mute other participants?
I do, but I can't seem to find her.
On my list, she's way down at the end. Yeah, great. Looks like you got it. Thank you. So I think I would like to have Jeremy come back and explain to me why this process and sort of what's happened he feels is appropriate. I feel it's very inappropriate. Regardless of what the result is, this process just seems broken. And I don't know how we got to this place. So, and I didn't feel his memo really explained that. I think that's my main comment.
Thank you, Craig. Nona.
Well, I guess I second all of those comments, but I'd also like to point out that if the process had worked as it should have, we would have been able to clear up the confusion in the packet before he sent it and so I wouldn't be complaining that I thought that there was a problem because we would have had a chance to reconcile it. So it works so much better if it's just open and really inclusive. Thank you.
Gary?
So, yeah, I'm going along with Nona and Craig's comments as well. So the document that we all agreed on a few years ago, and Nona, you said it was unanimous?
The vote by the council was 4-0.
Oh, I mean, our committee.
Oh, and our committee was unanimous.
Is it not? Okay, because I know I was a holdout because I still think there's an opportunity or maybe a real need to contribute to something to the maintenance, especially in these times, which have changed. You know, we're in the middle of 20 years, particularly 10 years of drought, which has caused a big impact on fire safety. So I think there is a case that we could entertain the notion, but I'm with the two of you. We need a little more input from Jeremy in the town.
Well, and I think we need to discuss whether it's appropriate. I'm with you. We could have that discussion. I feel like nobody's asked and nobody's brought up specifics of these are the things we need to do. Here's how we might go about it so that we could have a robust discussion. And so the public opinion, I think that's the other thing we've heard is people say, well, this isn't necessarily what I voted for. So I think it needs an airing. And that, I guess that's my concern is it doesn't feel like it's gotten an airing.
Well, at any rate, I favor the comments the two of you made regarding the need to have Jeremy come to us and explain this whole thing and give us a lot more background.
And I think John's still on. I don't know if John could provide any more clarity on what's going on or not.
Well, what I can tell you is that when the budget comes to the council in that form, early form, we don't haven't necessarily seen anything of it until it gets to us. And in the atmosphere of a situation where budgets are getting tighter and tighter and resources are getting thinner and thinner and demands are getting stronger and stronger, I can understand why Jeremy looked around and thought, okay, maybe we should try this. I don't know what the process was for that made it so that you guys didn't hear about it first, but the fact of the matter is that it came to the council as a possible issue and we rejected it. So, and that's kind of the way budgets generally work anyway. That was the first view that the council had of it. And with obviously some public input and our own looking at it ourselves, we decided it probably wasn't a good idea, at least not at the moment, until you guys had a chance to look it over. So I think it actually worked, maybe not as directly as it should have, but I think it worked out pretty well. And going forward, well, hopefully we'll be able to have you guys come up with a resolution on your end. And maybe it hasn't changed at all, but maybe there's more input at this point based on what we're actually dealing with today. So anyway, that was my impression of it.
Okay.
Thank
yes,
you.
Thanks. I mean, I guess I feel like we've caught this, but, catching it by exception is not very comforting. And that's sort of what it feels like. It feels like it's being caught by exception rather than following what I think of as pretty time-honored tradition of passing it through the various committees.
I have to agree with that. And I have to say that when that starts to happen, if it happens more than once, then I start feeling like we're all watchdogs rather than committee members who work in a collaborative way. And that's not really very much fun.
Yeah, and we're all volunteers, and I think we need to be pretty careful that we cherish our volunteers. Otherwise, we're going to lose what I see as a core principle of the town.
Thank you. Nona?
So I have a question. Would it be necessary and appropriate to have a subcommittee that would go in and make sure that we have an email address for the committee on the website and make sure that our web presence includes all the materials that seem to be missing for whatever reason? Or can someone just do that? I don't know what the process is, but I'd like it to. I think everyone has been looking for stuff there, and we didn't always know that it didn't make it through the transition.
Well, we did have a group that was going to look at other website updates. Now, that might have been originally thought of as open space parcel descriptions and whatnot, but certainly think it could include at least an audit of what is there and isn't there, and that doesn't mean that subgroup has to compile all that, but even if they could make the effort to at least do a quick audit for the kinds of things that you raised, I think that could help us work with the town clerk to make sure that our part of the website is as up to date as possible.
Yeah, and I think when we originally talked about this, we were talking about sort of, I'll put this in air quotes, but livening it up a little bit, you know, so. But yeah, no, I think that we definitely, I think all the committee members can basically look at the website. Let's figure out what we need to do, and then let's get the changes in there. But I think Nona's point is we need to make sure we have some way for the public to get us comments. That seems crazy.
Great. A lot of important and helpful comments in this discussion. Thank you, both from the community and from committee members. It does not feel like we're in a position to make recommendations other than that we need to have a follow-up conversation with staff involved, maybe council, really to clarify the context of their budget recommendation and to dig a little bit deeper. I'm just trying to paraphrase what I feel like we've heard. Dig a little deeper into you know, the context of the recommendation, what alternatives we have, and why and if we should reaffirm or adjust and update our original recommendations to the council that the council previously approved. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two distinct things. I think one of them is having Jeremy come back and explain how this process went awry. And that's its own conversation. It's about process. And the other is we should have an open public forum to discuss where we put open space monies. And, you know, whether it's maintenance or it's fire prevention, I mean, we should be part of those discussions and make recommendations to the council. And I think that's what I heard John suggesting. I think we do need to validate that at this point, after catching the exception, the ball's back in our court. But if it is, then we need to basically have meetings on both those topics, and I would keep them separate.
That's fair. I don't know if there's anything else we want to comment on about that particular topic now, but I will say that if we can move on to 5B, I'll acknowledge that that topic is actually meant to acknowledge to the committee and to the community that our understanding is that the town is in the process of consulting with the local fire marshal about, for the first time, wholly strategically about wildfire mitigation recommendations, and that process is in process, and that will likely result in recommendations which are not yet provided, that will have some cost, and of course that cost will need to be, if we decide to take the fire marshal's recommendations, need to be funded somehow. So it's too premature to speculate about what recommendations might be and what costs might be and what funding sources might be available. But I want to acknowledge that that's why we put 5B in there, because we became aware that this process is underway and that there will be likely new budget impact proposals forthcoming in the foreseeable future, that I'm sure will feel like they impact us and potentially open space funds.
Is that part of the September budget? Is that what you're thinking, that it might go into the September budget?
I do not know if the timing of the fire marshal's work will meet that timeline. I just want to acknowledge that that is out there. And since there is conversation right now, important conversation about open space maintenance, I think it would be fair to say that wildfire mitigation is credibly part of that potentially. That when it does come, whether it be before or after September, it will, be something that I think we'll probably be interested in. So I really meant it as a notification, not a request for any decision or recommendation of any sort.
So all I recommend process-wise is that after, which we're sort of asking you questions now, you should open it up to the public, let the public comment, close it, and then if there's any committee discussion, fine. And in this case, like you said, maybe there won't be, but follow that same sort of process, and that way the public will get to us as well.
Great. Dana?
Of course, I'm first. I am so troubled by this. I feel really angry that you guys were in this position. There's almost no point in having your committee. I mean, that it's just mind blowing. Anyway, I don't know what to think. Anyway, I'll sit back and listen to you guys for a little bit longer. I'm stunned, and I think you guys, it should have happened already. The talk with Jeremy and all of that, inviting Jeremy back into it. It should have happened already. So I feel really badly because I've actually followed you guys, and I feel like your intent has been there, and it really troubles me that you didn't even know. That troubles me the most. Sorry, thanks.
David?
Hold them. Sure. Dave Cardinal, aside from the process squabbles, I think we face a real issue in our open space. We've spent probably $50,000 on like 1 acre clearing our land to be fire defensible. And Portola Valley has 2,100 acres of open space, roughly. So I think we ought to own up and decide if we want to make all of that truly fire defensible, and how and where the budget comes from. It is not anticipated in the town budget that they could do that. It's well beyond our means. It's also not anticipated in the open space budget. So we can either be in denial and try and go a little bit at a time, or we can buckle up. But to try and finger point and say it's them or us, it's a massive expense. If we want to make all the open space in town fire safe, it's millions and millions of dollars. And we spent a lot of that through Woodside Fire Protection District, veg management, Portola Valley veg management, personal veg management. But we have a lot of big open spaces that also need to be tackled. And saying that's not a maintenance thing, or you don't want to pay for maintenance, is fine, but somebody's got to pay for it, and it's us. So thank you.
Terry, I think Karen has her hand up, and you're muted.
Karen, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I had a couple comments. I want to talk about process in this case, because I was on the wildfire committee when this came up, and I'm a little surprised that it now is just the fire department kind of going around getting recommendation, because I know I came to this meeting, and I know on the vegetation management group and the wildfire, we had proposed to go with Jeremy and with Don and a couple of you and myself, and we were going to go look at the open space and the town-owned open space and kind of assess it as a group, and just sort of so we could all see it and do a field trip. Unfortunately, that was right in the middle of COVID, and before we were even comfortable being outside together. And so to me, this is another case where the process is just falling apart, and it's kind of ignoring the committees. And then I also want to counter a little bit what David said, because the town-owned open space is not a gigantic amount of land. Yes, we have a lot of open space that is part of in the town of Portola Valley, but most of that is owned by Mid-Penn. And that's to me a different problem, and it's a very serious problem and a challenging one, because they also in their ballot measure have stated that they support fire maintenance, but they're running around trying to get grants instead of using the financing they have, and they actually have a lot of money. And I'm not sure, we have not been able to work with them very effectively to increase their fire issues. So I would like to, I think the actual problem within the town and what we're responsible, it's town-owned properties, and also I bundle this with the right-of-way is a much smaller problem than the 2,100 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana, did you have another comment or question? Your hand is raised.
I think it's just still up from before.
Are there other questions or comments from the community? Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. From a process standpoint, let's close community comments, and well, Dana's hand just went back up. Do you have a comment or question, Dana? Oh, it just went down. Okay, so we're going to close community comments and open it up to committee members for comments or whatnot. Craig?
Well, Nona put her hand up. I'm willing to go second.
Nona?
Anything's fine with me. All right, I'll go. So for those who are interested in fuel reduction on Mid-Penn lands, they will be presenting to the Wildfire Preparedness Committee in September what their fuel management plan is, and I guess where they are in carrying it out. And probably the month after that, Stanford will be presenting to the same committee on their program that they carried out Wedge. So I don't know if that addresses the concern about some of the non-town owned open space, but it's going to be worth listening to. That's all.
Craig?
I would just add that, I mean, obviously the fire safety is a big concern, and I think it's great the community is sort of woken up to that. I think it'll be interesting to see what the fire marshal, says when he goes and looks at this stuff. Generally, they've been talking kind of 100-foot buffers. It's sort of usually, and I'm guessing that's similar to what Mid-Penn's going to do. They typically don't thin every, blade of grass, but that, they border the open spaces. And I think we as a committee should be open to it. We should be open to the discussion and understand, what's being asked, and we should go look at the open spaces. I mean, I think there's some of them that are going to need treatment. There's others that already have meadows that happen to be on private property just on the other side. So it's not clear to me that there's some uniform answer. But I think this committee is well suited to basically look at the various open space properties, and in consultation with the fire marshal, I mean, basically make some recommendations to the council. And then we can figure out funding. But I think the first thing is to have the discussions about, what's there. Then we can look at kind of price tag. And like many of these things, probably going to get budgeted over years. It's unlikely that, tomorrow we're going to magically go fix all the problems that have accumulated for the last 50 years. So I hope we as a committee are open to having the various experts come and present. I think that's important. I also want to make sure that it's not just a given that somehow it's open space, therefore open space should maintain it. Like, we're the open space acquisition. We're not the open space maintenance. So the town has that obligation. So there's no question to me that the town has some obligation. That doesn't necessarily mean it's part of the acquisition side. So I think we have the discussions and then we see where it goes from there. But, you know, the first thing is to have some open discussions.
Thank you, Craig. Gary, do you have any comments?
Well, not really. I think we're just waiting breathlessly for the fire marshal's reports, but we ought to be in the middle of it. Those discussions when it does come out. A lot of work ahead for us.
Well, a lot of work ahead for the town, actually. So I appreciate those comments. As we've all discussed, I don't think there's anything on the table tonight on this particular topic, because really an advance notice of a process that's underway, and maybe this process will happen with the better sequencing than the prior process we discussed. But I would also echo that, as I think John alluded to earlier, even if the process didn't work entirely elegantly on the first topic, we did catch the topic before it went too far awry, and we now have an opportunity to revisit and have a better process. So I appreciate that from staff and council and from colleagues and community.
And Terry, if I could just add, I think the important thing here, though, is that you tell Jeremy that we want to be involved.
Oh, yeah, he knows now.
Right. Okay, yeah, but I mean, including on the fire, I mean, just not just, oh, isn't it nice that you guys are going to do this? It's like, we'd like to be involved. We'd like to, if they're going to walk the open space, we'd be out there with them. We can get the, you know, wildfire committee to go out. I think the open space committee, we could all go out on a field trip and we could work our way through the open spaces. So I just want to make sure the next time isn't the excuse isn't, oh, well, we didn't know you wanted to know about this.
Thank you, for sure. Appreciate it.
I think the Conservation Committee should be part of it as well.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for that discussion as well. Let's move on to 5C, which is the discussion of affordable housing site recommendations that's on the table. A lot of conversation, a lot of really hard, thoughtful work that's gone into that, but I know it has implications on the site recommendations and feelings people might have about that. So 5C is the topic. Let me begin by opening up to the community for comments, if you have any, about the affordable housing site recommendations that have been presented and I understand are going to council, John, on the 13th of this month. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I believe there are comments that are due tomorrow as part of that process for the council to review all on the 13th. So any comments or questions from the community on this topic?
Before you open the community, I mean, just to sort of present a little bit of what the proposal is. So the proposal is potentially use the Dorothy Ford open space for housing, which is, you know, a gateway to the community and has some, you know, substantial oaks in it. So just to be clear, I mean, that's really the discussion here. My knowledge, there are no other open spaces being considered at the moment for housing.
Fair enough. Thanks, Greg. Thank you for that additional color. Karen, asking.
Thank you. So I've been involved in attending all the meetings on open space, as well as the last couple planning commissions where the planning commissioners then got involved and reacted to the housing element draft. And I am very much in favor of something that Commissioners Taylor and Targ put together, their subcommittee proposal to essentially have a sunrise provision in which we take our time and really work hard to find other sites or ways to develop the plan for the development of housing without impacting Ford Field in an ideal world. And, you know, looking more at ADUs and really going out to the community, as well as perhaps even getting donations to the inclusionary housing fund and finding other properties that the town might be able to buy for this type of housing. So I just want to say that I'm very much in favor of that. I think we need to take the time to do it right. And, you know, as we know, the Conservation Committee is completely against using any open space for housing because we might never get it back. And I think we should strive for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. David Bailey.
Yeah, just before I have a comment, I was just wondering what this committee what result are you trying to get out of the public's comments? Are you going to forward these comments to the town council in preparation of the meeting, or are you taking a vote to agree or disagree with the proposal for the use of Dorothy Ford Field, or just kind of what's the expectation of your work tonight with regards to the housing elements proposal?
Well, I don't want to speak for the committee, but I will say that it's very helpful for us to have an opportunity to hear from you and the community, and that might influence what steps we take either as individuals or as a committee, as an advisory committee, I should say, to the council. So we have an opportunity to act as an advisory committee, but I think it would be premature to comment without the benefit of our listening first to what you and others in the community, what your input is. So if you have any input, we'd be happy to hear it. Great. Okay, Betsy.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say that first, to consider this converting this open space, designated open space, to housing would be extraordinarily damaging to our future development efforts for acquisition funds. But more than that, honoring our word only when it's easy for us to do so is a horrible precedent. And I heard that referred to earlier vis-a-vis the first subject under new business, our open space UU tax. It's just really awkward that when the going gets tough, we are comfortable changing policy and dishonoring our pledges. Lastly, and this is something that I'm in process of writing a letter to town council due tomorrow by 5 o'clock, but I don't think we know the half of what we're getting into when we begin to designate multifamily and mixed use housing in this town. And I'm specifically referring to one piece of the HCD's provisions, which has not yet been part of the public conversation, and that concerns me greatly. And that's what's known as a by right state entitlement for low barrier navigation centers. You'll find it referred to in a little teeny box on page 113 of the draft housing plan in provisions 8.2 and 8.3. What by right low barrier navigation centers refer to are homeless shelters. And as soon as we designate mixed use in this town, or as soon as we designate multifamily housing, the state has a right to designate these same areas as having homeless shelters. My question about that is, how do we accommodate if we are looking at enormous trade-offs such as, and I will use Dorothy Ford open space, such as trying to hold on to the heritage oaks, such as trying to hold on to the playing field and accommodating what housing we can. And at the same time, the state is coming in and saying, we have a by right clause here that you've also got to accommodate much more housing, and that would be for our homeless shelters. How do we navigate that conversation? So we don't have nearly enough pieces of information here to know, in order for us to make decisions with our eyes open. I would really urge us, therefore, to at a minimum proceed with Craig Taylor and Nicholas Targ's suggestion that we spend the next 3 years examining this and gaining a much better grasp of the conditions that we're going to be facing vis-a-vis state by rights determinations for our land. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Peter?
Thank you. I heard at the beginning of your discussion a quote from Craig McIntosh that open space is not inconsistent with affordable housing. And I certainly would concur with that. But the point would be is whether they're consistent in the same parcel of land. It seems to me that affordable housing should be in the densest part of the town, not in the most open space part of the town. Dorothy Ford Park has been open space for 50 years. It's an open space preserve. And if we can't retain that, what is left for the rest of our town? And also, what is left for your committee to do if the town can't preserve its existing open space, much less obtain new open space? As a lead donor to another open space with my wife, and that's the Shady Trail open space, I think it's really questionable whether future donors will have any trust in the town's commitment to open space if we do this. And finally, what is left for your committee to do if the town does approve recycling Dorothy Ford Park? I hope you will strongly oppose that. And I also hope that you might consider, if we are unsuccessful in opposing that, that your committee might be appropriate to be disbanded because it has no purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
That's kind of negative.
John Myers?
Yeah, hi, this is John Myers. I actually just wanted to note, we've multiple times here called it Dorothy Park, Dorothy Ford open space, but in the housing plan, this whole proposal, it's called vacant portion of Ford Field housing site. And so, I don't know, maybe I don't understand what even that means, but they're calling it a housing site, not a possible housing site. But, so I don't know if any of you know whether something has been already rezoned, approved, because, this would suggest that if not now, eventually there's going to be houses on this site. And even if it's just a matter of how they phrase it, that's kind of very concerning about how in a public proposal like this, that is just phrased as if, they should just put houses on here whenever we're ready to do that. So again, it's partly question if anybody understands that, but it was certainly alarming when I read this whole proposal here.
Thank you, John.
Could I speak briefly to this?
Sure.
So, John, one thing I would say is it's technical language, and any land that doesn't have a building on it is considered vacant land. So that's just technical sort of legal jargon. They're proposing it as a housing site. So that's what's going on. But the vacant part comes, this process in the housing don't have the distinctions of different kinds of land that doesn't have buildings on it. From their point of view, all land that doesn't have
Right.
anything on it is vacant.
I understood the vacant part. It's the terming it Ford Field housing site. You know, it's not possible how Ford Field housing site. It's, again, do we know that this is zoned or allowed to be just decided that you can put, if the town ever decides to, they can just put housing there because it's zoned that way? I literally I don't know what that means.
This is Patty. This question was asked at the Planning Commission, actually, and Laura Russell responded that it is using, to kind of to Craig's point, technical language that is provided by the state as to how you classify land, and that there has been no rezoning so far.
Well, that's good. Just it's, even if it's legal language, it's very concerning legal language.
I would agree with you.
Hey, David Cardinal.
Sure, 3 quick comments. One, on the Ford Park site, it's zoned OARE, which technically means that it's open space, but the Planning Commission has the right to rezone it residential. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but that's the status, which if Laura or Cara were here, they would tell you. The second thing is, we're going to have to put this housing somewhere. And I don't want to see those oak trees torn down any more than you do, but we can't just be in denial. So Nat Horse Triangle is an issue, is an option. We don't have many other options. So I think that's something that we need to take a serious look at. And finally, you know, I credit everybody who's doing a great job, but we're not going to make everybody happy forever, unfortunately. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Dale?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm on a
Yeah.
cell phone. Okay, great. This is Dale Faust speaking. I just have a really quick comment, and I think this committee, it's the other bigger issues are kind of irrelevant. We're talking about open space here. And from the record, it's quite clear that money was donated to acquire this land for permanent open space. Any change in that, even if it's legally allowable, really goes back to a abrogation of the agreement to the donors. And I think that is just beyond the pale and completely unacceptable as we move forward. I think the general plan talks about open space being one of the core tenets of the town. And knowing that this was acquired for open space, it should remain open space. And that's what I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale. Karen.
Yeah, I had 3 kind of separate points on this. First, I completely agree with what Dale just said. I have a really hard time with violating the initial intent of the donor on this particular piece of property. That just feels very wrong to me. Second was a comment, I think Maria suggested that open space and sports fields are completely different items. Yeah, they're not housing and they're not a building, but you know, kids screaming and having a great time is completely different than being in nature. And I just think we need to separate those 2 designations somehow in the town. Exactly how that falls out, I don't know, but I do not think of a sports field and a parking lot as open space myself. And then the third thing, which is really why I raised my hand again, was I think that the staff and Laura Russell and did you know, a good job and worked really hard on this. And I think we've had a ton of town meetings and people sat in town meetings and provide their comments. But what we haven't done is we haven't had town volunteers dig under every rock and really look at, you know, any other possibility for how we can solve the housing thing. If we can solve the very low income thing with JADUs, and have we actually talked to El Mirador? Have we talked to all the opt-in, the 5 properties, you know, have we just really turned over every single rock? And I don't think we can feel comfortable with Ford Field until we have done every single rock. And I don't know who those people of the town volunteers could actually be a subcommittee. I haven't seen the housing element committee wanting to do that yet. So I just think that we need to do that. I don't think town staff, I love Craig's idea of the sunrise thing, but we need some like people behind that. Who's going to do the work to try to figure out an alternative? And if we don't have those resources there, we're just Ford Field's going to happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Karen Askey, did you have another?
Hi. Yeah, I actually had some follow-up comments on the sunrise, and I actually had a question for Craig because I've come across some information in the HCD site inventory guidebook that talks about the timing of when you need to rezone, which basically, you know, it says they want you to do it as early as possible, but there's a line that says generally, however, a rezoning should occur no later than 3 years and 120 days from the beginning of the planning period. So my question with your planning commissioner hat on, Craig, is does that, am I reading that correctly, that we have to obviously submit a plan to HCD, but we have time before we rezone anything so that we can, as Karen said, you know, look under every rock and look at more alternatives and see if there's something we can do? That's just a question for Craig. And then the other thing I found in this same document is it does appear with more work from staff and volunteers that you could look at changing the income level distributions, particularly of JADUs, because you can look at things like square footage, number of bedrooms, etc. There is some language in here, which I don't want to get into. And again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a planning commissioner, but as I read it, it gave me hope that perhaps we can, you know, again, go back and maybe survey our residents immediately, but really find out what we can do with some other alternatives. Thanks.
Maria,
Yeah.
you're on mute. Maria, you're on mute. We can't hear you. We still can't. There you go.
Yeah, and there were people before me, but I'm sorry, you know, I've listened to a lot of detail. I've been listening to a lot of the housing committee meetings, the planning committee meetings, and I still don't get the basics. I would love to hear from your committee, looking forward, what open space means, and when open space means playing fields as opposed to natural open space, and how that can be locked into place or changed. If open space means that, yeah, it can be a soccer field as opposed to walking and, you know, wildlife corridor, then that's one thing. I would back up, and I'm not very political, so please excuse me, but why are all the playing fields taking precedence over our undeveloped land, which is open space that I would hope would be part of our community moving forward? So that would be part of my question to this committee is, okay, open space, if it's open space playing fields versus open space natural space, and taking it one step further, which may not really be part of your committee's job, but I've been very disappointed in that everybody wants to up the ADUs, they want to do the JDUs, 21 elements, and what I've read says they will give more attention to higher numbers if the town has a specific plan to support, either financially or a specific plan to expedite ADU, JDU plans. And I don't see any of that coming from our town. And it seems to me like they're reaching for everybody else to pull whatever they can pull out before they give up part of what they have. So I guess I'm a little frustrated listening to all of this, and I haven't gone through half the work that all of you guys have been through, but this has been my home since I was a kid. And I think as the Open Space Committee, I as a resident would really appreciate just understanding what open space is in Portola Valley, how it can change, how it's defined, and how you feel it can be utilized or not utilized moving forward in the current climate in California. Thank you.
Dana?
Funny that Maria's talking about this because Maria was actually born on my property, right, Maria? Anyway,
you bought where I was born.
Going forward, should this committee stay together after sort of being blown off, I want you guys to meet every month and so that the people can hear you. And, you know, open space acquisition is just so incredibly important. And you're an important committee. And I feel like we want to help. We want to help. So engage us and we can do that. So I want you guys to meet more often and be more proactive. Thank you.
Christy?
Thank you. I agree with what Dana just said more often. And the minute we heard that open space was on a chopping block, I think a meeting should have happened right away. And then we continued. Maybe we could have had 4 meetings on this. And now we find that the town council will make a vote on this on the 13th. And last night, the planning commission was canceled, I believe. So we could have had another discussion last night. But I believe that committees should be a conversation back and forth. So if a committee member discusses something and it triggers a question with the public, that the public should be able to ask another question. This is a more relaxed environment. It is not a planning commission or town council and really regimented. So I'm asking for more back and forth with the public because that's why we're having the meeting. I believe all housing sites should be labeled properly. The Dorothy Ford is often called Ford Field. It's Dorothy Ford Park Open Space. Sometimes it's labeled very different things and very confusing to the public. I think all the housing sites should have addresses on them, exact addresses. So if somebody from the public wants to drive by all the sites, they can see the sites and walk under the tree of Dorothy Field Open Space. That is the first thing I did after I found out that after many months of the housing element meetings, it all of a sudden popped up halfway through the process. And we didn't know until it was halfway through all the meetings. And I don't think right now the public, many people in the public know. So that is a concern of mine. The Planning Commission on 6/29 had action items that affected open space at midnight to 12:35 p.m. The meeting started with 110 people on. At the time of the action item, which combined a vote 3-2, combined the 2 parcels of Ford Field to Dorothy Ford Open Space. So now, if this goes through, the Planning Commission combined those 2, and now it goes to the town council vote to combine the parcels. Now that sounds okay to combine the parcels, but what it does when you rezone, you now have just 1 parcel versus 2 parcels to rezone. So if they rezone those parcels together for 20 units per acre, now Ford Field is at risk as well. So I am concerned about this. My son played on this field, learned baseball on this field, and they often start with T-ball, which is, you know, putting a ball on a stick. And so it's very valuable to the children of the town. Then on 6/30, after the Planning Commission, there was a weekly summary put out without the action items from the Planning Commission. So there were other action items that happened on 6/29 that did not go in that weekly summary. So guess when we will find out about the minutes from the Planning Commission? On 7/20. The whole city, after the whole town, will be able to read the minutes from the Planning Commission on 7/20 after the town council vote on 7/13. So I believe the Planning Commission minutes should be released right now so the town knows what's going on. So I love the 250-year-old trees. I went directly to the park, sat under there and looked up, and it felt like an umbrella over me. I read a book called, and I found a quote, respect your elders, respect your elder trees. Also, I want everyone to know that there is a creek behind that lot, and there is a 55-foot setback from the creek. There also is a 75-foot scenic corridor setback, and there's been talk of making, going 16 feet into the 75-foot setback to put cement parking along our scenic corridor. So one of the concessions from bonus density law is you can change setbacks, heights, I'm not sure if they can do the creek setback, but this is very concerning. Bonus density law allows for concessions and variances. And I think we all should be aware that if this goes through and is zoned as it is, not only could it be 50 units, it can actually grow to more units. It's scheduled or proposed 2 stories in front and 3 stories in back. If they add the bonus density law to this lot, it could even grow to 70 or more units, maybe even more than that. So Nicholas Targ in the last Planning Commission meeting said that he doesn't think that we've turned over every rock on every piece of land that we could build on. And so I hope that that is done in the future. And once the land is rezoned and upzoned, it can never be downzoned. So this is something we've been working on for 50 years. We've put our zoning in place because of how we feel. But if you just rip it out now, it's taking our zoning plan and throwing it out the window. So I see that a lot of the housing development is on Alpine Road and not elsewhere. So I think I counted 10 or 11 projects that are going to be going in soon. Firehouse, Willows Commons. If Glen Oaks goes, then you have Stanford Wedge. Now you have, Dorothy Ford opens, and then you have the church. And so that's a lot on one road, and we all already have PVSD putting in their development. So those are some things that I am concerned about, and I think I am in favor of this committee meeting much more than it does now. Thank you.
David?
Sure, thank you. 2 comments, I guess. One about the baseball field and the open space area next to each other. I believe, and someone may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the original donation of the land included a provision for a playing field as well. Just that's why they're together. And then second, I agree with just like to echo the comments about the value of the baseball playing field and kind of wanting to keep that separate. My children have been playing Little League for a while now. And so I wanted to reiterate that resource to the town of that playing field was very important. We have dozens and dozens of kids playing in that in the spring as well as in the fall. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the community? Thank you, community. Could we transition to opening it up to, actually, there's a hand raised on the phone.
Probably Carolyn.
Okay, Carolyn, did you have a comment?
Yes, I had my hand raised.
Could you
Can you
introduce
hear me?
yourself? Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I really appreciate all the comments of my residents who are very passionate to keep this town. We don't mind change, but as you have heard today, there's something completely wrong with the process in which decisions are made. And it's completely wrong. We have paid staff who does not understand our values, who does not honor our general plan, and they have not done it in the last, I would say, at least 10 years. This has to change. Every comment that has been made by the residents should be valued. And I want to make one last comment. Many people in Portola Valley want to volunteer and sit on committees, and we are not elected, and we don't even know why. Well, I can give you a reason why, but it's not acceptable. If you have an equity committee, then, you know, staff and town council should be conducting themselves as equity and equally, but it's not. We are being harassed, we are being commented by town council and by staff, and this is not appropriate. And yet, like many people have said today, we are furious, and we have every reason to be so, because this is not what Portola Valley stands for. And we will continue to fight because we are proud of our community. We are not Menlo Park. We are not Redwood City. We are not Atherton. We value this town, and we will do everything to preserve this. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised from the community at this point. Can I open it up again to the committee members? If you have any comments or questions? Anything?
Gary, you want me to start out?
Sure, Gary.
Okay. I'm going to simply read you, at least in part, what the comments that I made to the town vis-a-vis the housing element. And what's interesting is what I wrote, which you'll hear, is just sprinkled with all the comments that you mentioned tonight. It's almost as if I just composed this based on your comments. But here's what I wrote 3 weeks ago. The draft housing element refers to what we call Ford Field as town-owned vacant land. It is not. It is the Dorothy Ford Park open space. It was gifted in part to the town by Tom Ford for a recreational field and permanent open space. The open space has been known as and is used as the Dorothy Ford Park open space for 50 years now. So no matter the legal protection or lack thereof, to convert this space to housing would be a brazen abrogation of a promise made 50 years ago. Open space protection from housing projects applies to all of our town-owned open spaces, acquired by direct gifts of open space, lands deeded to the town, open spaces acquired by the town through cash gifts from residents, and funds from the utility users tax, which was approved by the voters. None of our open spaces are available for housing, nor should they be. So I think you'll recognize a lot of your own comments in there. Thanks, Terry. That's all I want to say for now.
Thanks, Gary. And thanks, Gary, for being our committee's housing representative as well. Appreciate it. Other comments from committee members?
No, I'll comment. I mean, I've been on the planning commission, obviously, and so, somewhat in the thick of it. I mean, this is a tough situation. I mean, the state is asking us to rectify 30 years of lack of housing, and not just Portola Valley, but, all the municipalities, basically in an 8-year cycle. So it's putting people in a pretty untenable spot. I think as the open space committee, we need to be the defenders of open space. Nathorst Triangle has its residents and its lawyers, and they're, threatening to sue the town. And so then the town says, oh, let's go someplace where there isn't a threat. If we basically pave over open space, we're not getting it back. So I actually think it's pretty critical that the open space committee have some kind of resolution that we pass on to the council for this upcoming meeting. What Nicholas and I tried to do at the planning commission meeting, and I hope that the council will accept it, is hold off on Dorothy Field and let the public, since we have a lot of people, a lot of community members who have become engaged as we've done this, see if there are rocks that we could turn. And I think we do probably have 3 years in which we could try to do that, but it's a long shot. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat this and say, oh yeah, we can easily do this. But I think there's a chance we could. JADUs are a very cost-effective way to generate housing. We need to generate very low housing. I mean, that's the rub here. Housing proposed for Ford Field is that because of the density gets the very low housing designation. So that's what makes this hard. We need to find roughly 70 very low income housing units over the next 8 years. So it's not an easy task, but I think we should take some time and let the community really dig in and try to find some alternatives. If nothing else, maybe we just mitigate it. Maybe we can bring down the impact. So I do think it's important that the Open Space Committee speak up. Thank you.
Community. Martin, I see that. I'll come back to you. But Nona, did you have a comment?
I did. I have a couple of comments. First, I just wanted to comment on a few questions or comments that other people had. I wanted to correct any confusion about Deerchip McIntosh. I think there were times when he saw the coexistence even on the same parcel of affordable housing and open space, but I think in general, he saw them as separate things, but he advocated for both. And that's what I meant when I said that I was always struck by his strong support of both. Second, I wanted to sort of respond a little bit to the issue of the baseball diamond on Ford Field. One of the plans that I have seen in a sort of more schematic than anything else and in conversation is that if the entirety of Dorothy Ford Park and open space were transitioned to low-income housing, the baseball diamond could conceivably be moved to the road remnant at Frog Pond, a proposition that horrified the Conservation Committee and many residents. So I think, as Maria has stated, there is in some sense respect for a constituency for baseball diamonds that isn't really being strongly perceived as having its equivalent for open space. I don't know if Craig wants to comment on that. The third thing is that I think we really need to look more into parcel boundaries, because the last I looked at assessors maps from the county, Dorothy Ford Park and open space is a single parcel, as I understand it. It hasn't been subparcelized although there is a deed restriction on the baseball diamond because of special funding that it received. And again, Craig, if you want to comment on that, that would be great. Sort of those points are more in response to some of the things people have said. And so I'd also like to just express my own feelings. Not knowing what would happen at tonight's meeting, I too have written a letter to the town council. Mine's too long to read. I feel very, very strongly that Dorothy Ford Park and open space should be completely off the table. I think there are a number of good reasons for that. What worries me about the sunrise provision is that I've just had too many experiences now with the town where the town council says they're really committed to something one year, but that a future council can change that decision. And so I would hope that we could get a really firm, lasting, I don't know, written in blood kind of commitment to do our very, very best to turn over every rock if it comes to either putting the housing on Dorothy Ford Park or the sun provision. So that's both my comments and my personal perspective.
Thank you, Nona. Martin, you did raise your hand and we haven't heard from you. So did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry for joining late. I had a prior commitment. Dr. Martin Miller, 3350 Alpine Road, directly across the street from the Dorothy Ford open space. I've lived here, it'll be 20 years come September. Moved from Burlingame to Portola Valley in 1972 for the start of 6th grade. I attended the Portola Valley School for 6th and 7th grade. I'm about as intimately familiar with the history of this town as anyone. And yeah, I was absolutely, I do want to thank Gary Nielsen for his very eloquent script that he wrote 3 weeks ago, which we cited a few minutes ago. But it was always my understanding that you know, this was gifted as open space in perpetuity, and any development whatsoever of this parcel will, of course, not the obvious is destroy the Alpine Road open space corridor, the whole air of it, but arguably would affect me and my investment more than anyone else. And on the days when you know, the championship games at Ford Field, parking spills out onto Alpine Road, it can take time to actually safely pull out and drive to whatever one's destination. Sometimes even on just weekday mornings, it can be tough. And the concept of putting 50 units or any units, but even how anybody would conceive that you would focus all the very low income bracket at one location just to me is entirely illogical. It's just not a solution. That's basically my comment. And I'd just like to say we lost one of the great founders of Portola Valley Tuesday morning, Jim Pollock. And we should all say a brief prayer for him.
Thanks, Martin. Any other comments from the committee at this point or questions? I hesitate to be presumptuous, but based on the comments that have been made, both from the community and from the committee, it feels like the committee could probably come up with a consensus recommendation from an open space perspective to the council on this particular matter of the inclusion of the Dorothy Field Park on in the housing element list of recommended sites. But I don't want to overstate what I think, however, was a consistent and compelling feeling from both the community as well as our committee colleagues from multiple different perspectives, by the way, I might add. I want to throw that out there in an effort to kind of try and synthesize what we've heard and turn it into something actionable in terms of tangible steps between now and tomorrow. Comments about that suggestion from the committee?
I couldn't say this. There's two ways to do this, Terry. Actually, I'd advise that our other members on our committee submit their comments, their individual comments as well. There's a lot of details that can be added, but it seems to me that what we should say, we could say in one sentence: the Open Space Committee opposes building housing on open spaces in Portola Valley. I think it's a single sentence. And I would say if you want to add a lot of details, maybe do that individually.
Okay.
So, Gary, I want to agree with that sentiment because that's the way I feel. But I also feel practically, if that's what we give the council, we basically haven't given them any additional help. Because this housing's, we've got to find this housing somewhere. And if we just say, well, not here, and somebody else says not there, and somebody else says not there, that doesn't find a place, that doesn't find a there, if you will. So my concern about sort of just saying, not open space, it doesn't feel like it's enough. I mean, I think honoring the general plan, which speaks to open space, is important. But I also think having the council, come up with a marketing plan for JADUs. I mean, we've got to be looking for a way out. And I guess that's my concern, because otherwise, I think the council is going to say, well, there's no way out, so we'll just accept what's there.
Fair, but Craig, I personally, from hearing the comments, feel that if it's true and relevant, pointing out that, open space, which was either bought or donated or some combination of the above, with the express intent as open space, that's a huge thing to say we accept this, under that premise, and then later, because things changed, say, well, things changed and, we're gonna use it for something else. And the comments I feel like we've heard, and that many of us believe that, that to me isn't an issue of punting. It's an issue of, when we buy something or someone donates something with an understanding or premise, that we can't just arbitrarily, because we didn't feel like we had another alternative, change that agreement or understanding.
Yeah, and I think the tough part here is there is no agreement. There may be an understanding, but it doesn't seem like it was written down. So at best, it's vague. I'm not saying that changes it, because I agree with you. I think it's important that we honor our commitment. But I also think if we're going to help the council make a decision, I think part of it is passing through the public comments that we've had today, which have been strongly in favor of the open space. But I also think we need to suggest other things for them to do. Otherwise, I think they're going to just take what's there. I don't know how to put it any more simply. So, I mean, maybe I'm being the practical politician here or something. And like I say, I want to be completely supportive of Gary's, no use of open space for housing anytime, anywhere, because you don't get it back. But I also think right now that, I mean, we got a hard decision to make. I mean, maybe it's a playing field instead. Maybe a playing field's fungible, but we can put the playing field someplace else and that the housing goes there. I mean, there may be other options, but you know, we need to help the council see what some of those other options are.
Nona?
So one thing that would work for me is something like Gary's statement, but adding to it that the Open Space Acquisition Advisory Committee recognizes the need and the mandate to provide low-income housing, and that we pledge to support the council and other committees trying to find a solution in conjunction with or using the protection of open space as a leverage for helping people look under rocks or something like that. I agree that we need to be a partner in this, and we need to support what the town needs to do. We have to do it. But I also, I guess I'm not really clear, and maybe Craig can answer this, is if it comes to the sunrise clause, you know, what does that give us really? What does that give the open space other than potentially just kicking this down the road?
Well, so I'll try to be brief. So first of all, let me speak to the first part of your comment, and then I'll speak to the second part. First part, I think is great. I'm totally supportive of it. So I hope before we close up tonight, we draft something very similar to the words you used. Moving to the second part, we need to submit a housing element to HCD. It needs to be approved in January. So one way or another, the town council is going to submit something HCD that has 73 very low income housing units on it. They have to. That's the law. And if you don't comply, there are serious fines. So the idea of saying the sunrise was to say, we're putting a marker down, which is if we can't find anything else, then this is the way we're going to meet the commitment that we have to legally. But we're going to put a pause on it and basically use the power of the community, like you say, to turn over every rock, try to prevent having to use it. And if we can, we take our marker back. I just don't see how we can do it without putting a marker down. I mean, they're not going to say, oh yeah, why don't you go see what you can do? And you know, maybe you'll get lucky and magically come up with 73 ADUs. I mean, I don't see how HCD will ever buy that. So that's the hard place that we're in. So yeah, I'm not thrilled with the sunrise. I didn't propose it as, wow, this is like a great solution. I proposed it as sort of the last thing I could think of versus just saying, well, screw it. It's already done. I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of where I see it. Again, my personal opinion, that's sort of where I see it. So it's the practical aspect of trying to make this work. But I think your earlier statement of, we're supportive of the council to basically go turn over every rock, and that we should protect open space almost at any cost. At the end of the day, it can't be at any cost because state is going to enforce. I mean, the worst case is the state takes over and they zone it for whatever they want. I mean, at which point we lose local control completely and the state does what they want. And maybe that's the right thing, that everybody's ox is gored and, everybody can sue the state instead of suing the town. That feels fundamentally wrong to me, that we would give up our local control. I mean, I think we need to basically do the best we can with what we got.
So Greg, what I would say to that is, it seems to me that if we go by, actually are able to achieve all of the mandates from the state, that we have lost local control anyway. It seems to me it's akin to losing control.
I'm not quite following. You're saying if we meet the mandates, so if we provide the housing that's required by law, you're saying we've lost local control?
Yeah. Well, this gets a little deeper into our general plan and numerous changes we have to make for that. So this, I think our statement, whatever it is, and that's why I like Nona's suggestion, is to make sure that the council and the town knows that we're supporting what we're trying to do vis-a-vis housing. And so I would go along with that. The one thing that worries me, I guess, about pushing the can down the road for 3 years, although I do see some, I do have some interest in that because it pushes things off for 3 years, and who knows what might be achieved in that period. So I'm wondering, even if pushing it down to 4 years, 5, 6 years. And I'm thinking in terms of, there are petitions you can sign now, organizations that would return local control to the towns and cities. I mean, there's a bunch of things that could happen even in 3 years.
So yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why I think that, I agree. Generally, I don't like kicking the can down the road. I feel like you're just trying to get out of a decision. And so generally, I'm not for that. But right now, we don't have our wildfire maps. We don't know exactly how all this stuff's going to get resolved because it's still incredibly complicated. The law isn't particularly well written. So my feeling is in the next 3 years, a lot of the stuff is potentially going to get straightened out. The other things, and again, this may be pipe dreams, but maybe some owners that are well off decide we can help buy a property in town we could develop. Or maybe we find, that we get a lot more JADUs than we think we can, and we get them rented out. It's just right now, we don't know. We've never tried to market JADUs. We've had HOAs that have restrictions against ADUs and JADUs, which are no longer valid under state law. But there's just a lot of things that have changed. And we're asking the council to make a decision on a housing element where there's just a lot of unknowns. And so that's what Nicholas and I were after, is to say, look, we've got to meet the HCD deadline. That's a requirement. But let's find a way to soften it so that we can try to get some more unknowns known and maybe make better decisions than the one we're going to make if we don't do anything else.
I guess I would just add, I agree with what my colleagues have said, and I would just reiterate that, no matter what's happened over the last 50 years, our decisions and recommendations today could influence how much open space we have or get over the next 50 years. And if we are too cavalier about the way we treat the open space we have and that we received over the last 50 years, we can solve our problem about open space over the next 50 years because we won't get any more unless we, buy it ourselves. But we won't have money because people won't give it to us because they won't trust, that the money they give us will be for open space, that it'll stay for open space. So by the way, I agree with everything that's been said, and I realize that we have to be pragmatic here as well. And I think I'm fully supportive of us supporting the council and the housing element task force or committee, which has a very hard job. Let's acknowledge that. But I think it's really important that we protect this notion that if people are going to give us explicitly or implicitly open space, because that's really important to them and really important to the town, that we do everything we can to protect and preserve it in that state, because then our credibility is ruined if we don't.
Yeah, here. I think adding that to what Nona was saying makes total sense to me. Sorry, Nona, I keep cutting you off. You keep raising your hand. I apologize.
Yeah, Nona.
No, that's okay. So I still think we should include Gary's statement. I think we should include something about that this committee recognizes the mandate for low-income housing and that we are committed to or pledged to support finding every rock that needs to be turned over, and that Open Space Committee actually has somewhat different tentacles for finding potential donors, I think, just because of connections that have been established over the years. But I think we should say something about, we take this position recognizing that it's the last best hope we have, right? I think what Craig is saying is that it's either this or secede from the state, I guess, or something like that, right? I mean, isn't it our last best hope for protecting the open space?
Well, I'd like to see Terry's comments added to the statement as well, which is explicitly or implicitly, we've had people who have been strong supporters of open space. And if we don't turn over every rock and make them feel like we did everything we could to avoid Ford Field, then we're going to lose those people. And I'm totally on board with that, Terry. I think that's absolutely right, which is why I think we need to turn over every rock. We just need people to understand that we're going to do everything we can and that they should join with us to do that.
And so I think our statement can be pretty spare, but not too spare, because I think there's a couple of elements in addition to the one that Gary came up with that really add important context, like Mona and Craig just summarized. And so it can still be a very brief statement, but it shouldn't be so brief that it's actually incomplete. Because I think context does matter here. I kind of feel like we might be triangulating around something that our committee feels pretty good about, that we could collaboratively work on over the next 24 hours and get it in time. Because this is so important, I do see a couple of hands raised. I don't want to leave this without people having a chance to fully contribute. If you have a brief comment, I think we'd be happy to hear, especially if it's additive to what has already been said. So I'm going to acknowledge a couple more community members in the spirit of inclusivity, hopefully not in the spirit of repetition, but we'll give it a whirl. David Cardinal.
Sure, thanks. I guess from what I've heard, what I think I might say if I was the it of the committee is, one, over our dead bodies, although in legal language, will we support developing any of the town's open space, any of the open space in Portola Valley. Two, in consequence, we fully support Portola Valley planning for 300-ish units of housing, including low-income housing on currently developed properties. And three, we as a committee are more than willing to help the town and the town council figure out how to get that done. So that would be what I would write personally. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Christy?
Thank you. I do want to ask a question. Was Tom Ford's donation the first open space ever donated to Portola Valley? Sorry about that. I think I heard that or read that somewhere, and I just wanted to get that answer if somebody knew it on this committee. I think it's really important. That's another important fact. I've been in 2 meetings where Susan Ford has spoken, and I've seen a letter that she has written, and she feels the intent of the donor was to keep it in open space. So I think we have to take her word for it. This is an open space committee, and it's not a housing committee. There's 14 people on the housing element. And I think the job of this open space committee is to get acquisitions of open space and try to keep open space. And that's my comment. I love nature. Thanks.
There's a hand raised on the phone.
Carolyn Vertonga.
Okay. did you have a comment?
Carolyn, you're muted.
Thank you very much. Yes, I appreciate every comment that has been made by my residents before me. I don't agree with the ACD. I have been with the high density committee, housing committee since 2013. Even in Portola Valley, we don't approve it. There's several issues. ACD is a government agency. If really they have the evidence that we need affordable housing, we need to have that evidence. And right now we don't have it. I hope that, Greg, you are on one of the committees, and I have submitted the inventory for cycle 5, the RENA cycle 5, showing the inventory for all the affordable housing that has been built here, throughout the Bay Area, and showing that most of this housing that has been built is empty. Nobody's raising the question. As a healthcare provider, I was retaliated because I abided by the law. I don't want to bring this up as an issue, but there's many people in education and healthcare who have been replaced by low income or even unlawful immigrants to reduce the cost. And I have raised this issue with the town council for many years. They don't want to address it because it's a political ideology they don't want to address. I hope that you will ask on council who is going to live in low-income housing, and why do we need low-income housing in Portola Valley? We're not Atherton, who has actually they can have trains, they have the community. We're out of the boonies, and so they need transportation. They need a lot more things here in Portola Valley, and town council doesn't want to address this issue. I have been raising it for many years, and so I hope that you, as open space, you need to know why we need to have affordable housing and who is going to fill these housing units and why we're doing it. I have been speaking out at every committee, but we only have 3 minutes and you're not addressing the real issue. I really appreciate all your efforts to preserve Portola Valley, and I hope you will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, back to the committee. I kind of feel like we have outlined the framework of a relatively brief statement that reflects in a significant way, happens to align and reflect the feedback we've heard from the community, which is aligned with our own feedback and feelings. And I think we also agree that in addition to any personal statement we may have already made or may make, that having an official recommendation from this advisory committee is also very meaningful to the council on the comment timeline due by tomorrow, close of business, in terms of the summary. And I feel like based on the comments that we have all made in this last half hour or so, that we could probably put that together here, if not tonight, then tomorrow during the day, and get it circulated and over to the appropriate submittal process. How do you all feel about that?
So Terry, just from a process point of view, and we can't all join you in this, in this, otherwise we have to have another, publicly noticed meeting. We could have a subcommittee, which I would be comfortable with. If you and Nona would be willing to be a subcommittee, I'd be willing to basically give you my, vote. I think you captured the elements. That's probably the best thing to do. The other thing I would say is the deadline tomorrow is to get it in the published packet. Usually, I'm assuming that the council, and John Richards can answer this, but I'm assuming the council's like the planning commission. I mean, I get comments from residents on the day of the meeting, like up noon, they'll collect them and send it to us, and I read them in the afternoon before the meeting. I'm assuming the council does the same thing. So if you can get it written and submit it tomorrow, I think that's great. I think that's the best, because then the public gets to see it as well as the council. But if you don't get it done that quickly, I don't think that precludes us from making a statement. And I think it is important that we make a strong statement. And I think Dave Cardinal captured a lot of it. It does need to be forceful about open space. It does need to be forceful about, we want people to continue to donate open space to our town, and that it is a core principle, then we need to live by that principle. But also adding that we're willing to dig in and help. I mean, that we understand it is a hard nut to crack.
And not to get nitpicky, but I think it's more than we want these things. We need these things. This is the history of the town, that we have acquired open space because of the generosity and belief and values of our citizenry. And if we violate that trust and spirit, then we lose it. And trust lost is not easily recaptured. So but in any event, not to nitpick, but I would be happy to be on a subcommittee or whatnot. Nona?
I move that we form a subcommittee to submit a consensus statement from the committee tomorrow by 5 p.m.
Right.
And that that subcommittee consists of Terry Lee and Craig Taylor.
Yeah, so I thank you for the nomination. I'm traveling right now. I'm not going to be able to do it. Otherwise, I wasn't trying to push things off on you guys. I just know I can't do it right now. So Nona, would you accept a, well, let me if we're going to do this in proper procedure, we could accept, so Nona's made a motion, so we can either get a second or not, and then we can decide whether to amend it or not.
Nona, will you accept this rose?
Could I interrupt for a moment? It's John.
Yeah, hi, John.
Yeah, I'm just as far as the most impactful impactful statement you guys could make would be one that you all vote on tonight to pass on to the council. A subcommittees can't actually represent the entire committee unless you actually vote on it at some point, vote on the motion. So, and not to make you stay up all night, but that would be the most impactful, the most helpful for the council if you had an actual statement voted on by the entire committee.
I'm willing to stay up and try to draft it. I don't know if our public is, needs to hang in for the whole thing, but it's okay with me. If a council member thinks that's what's going to make the most impact, let's go for it.
I'll transcribe.
Well, I'd say either Terry or Nona, you guys had the best verbiage I heard as a starting point, and then we can do a little editing on it.
Okay, Terry, why don't you take the lead? I'll start taking notes, and then we'll just add a few clauses here and there as needed.
So Nona, if you remember your first comment when this came up, that was a good start, a great start.
Actually, it was your comment, Gary.
Support. Pardon me?
Gary, I think your statement comes first about our position.
Yes.
And then, that we recognize the need and
soften it a little
honors
bit
the, okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Gary. Let's
repeat the statement. Yeah. Gary,
So we're,
Well, mine was pretty simple.
your one sentence statement.
The Open Space Advisory Committee acquisition, I guess the whole thing, Acquisition Advisory Committee strongly opposes building any housing on our open spaces in town.
And then I'd add to that, open space is a fundamental value of Portola Valley.
Okay.
okay, slow down.
Yep. All right. Thank you for writing.
That was acquired or donated.
Wait.
Hang on.
I'm not that fast a writer.
Yeah. No, we'll wait for you.
Okay, go ahead, Terry.
That was acquired or donated explicitly or implicitly with the understanding that it be preserved.
Wait a minute, what that was donated explicitly.
Or implicitly, because I just want to cover the idea that just because there wasn't a,
Okay.
legal agreement or whatever, property acquisition agreement, that it doesn't mean that for 50 years, it's been used as open space. That anyway, so that was acquired explicitly or implicitly as open space and with the intent of preservation as open space in perpetuity. And that if we violate that understanding, we compromise our values, which we just made reference to, the town values, and
All right, wait a minute.
our ability to receive or acquire future open space.
Okay. All right, let me read what I have so far. Okay, and then you decide if we need what the next sentence should be about committing to help. All right, so see if I got everything. I can't promise. The Open Space Acquisition Advisory Committee strongly opposes building any housing on our open spaces in town. Open space is a fundamental value in town that was acquired explicitly or implicitly as open space with the intent of preservation in perpetuity. If we violate that understanding, we compromise our ability to receive or acquire open space in the future. I added that last because I realized I missed the last few words.
Yeah, and I think more than that, I think my comment should stand on its own. And then we should add Terry's comment to basically capture the piece. So I want to get that open space is a fundamental value of Portola Valley, period, end of stop.
Okay.
And then I think we want to say something, the effect of what Terry's saying is that we have open spaces and basically I'm trying to think about how to say this, but we have open space properties and open space donations that have made to the town in good faith. And that if we don't hold to those values, then we may lose the faith of our community. I mean, does that seem okay to you? You see what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, but I would say we will.
Okay,
In our community that we will lose. And because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that if you violate a contractual agreement or a implicit agreement, even if it isn't contractual, that you violated the trust. You violated the relationship. And, so
I'm good with that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so let me just read where we are. So we have the first sentence that strongly opposes. Open space is a fundamental value in Portola Valley, period. We have open space properties and donations that were made to the town in good faith. And if we violate that trust, okay, how do you want to end that now?
we compromise our ability to acquire or receive future donations of open space.
Okay, so that's what
Potentially
we had
forever.
before. We compromise our ability to receive or acquire open space in the future. Anything.
Potentially forever. And
Essentially forever. Okay.
I mean, 50 years ago is forever looking back, and 50 years going forward is, you know, that's
Okay.
100 years of time frame. And I mean, it totally changes the character and spirit of our town if we lose that.
Okay, now we have to say something about we commit to working with the town and other committees. So somebody, some words?
I think just to.
All right, so, all right, what I had said
We
before
commit-
is we
we commit-
recognize the need and mandate for low-income housing. And we pledge, commit to working with the town to meet that goal.
Yeah, it could be something that simple.
Yeah.
Maybe I could add, I think we want to encourage the council to create the space for people to do that. You know, I'm not using the words right now. I'm trying to get the concept and we'll figure out the words. But I think it's important piece here is that they've got to open up this space. I mean, if they include it tomorrow night, what are we helping with? I mean, there's nothing to help with. So, you know, it's got to be that we're committed, but their part has to be opening up some space for our committee and for the public. Basically, again, you know, it's, as we were saying, turn over every rock.
All right, we recognize the need and mandate for low-income housing units, and we call on the town council to identify mechanisms for finding solutions. What do you want to say? Finding what? We call on the town council to.
What I'm trying to capture is, I think we need more time. Like, you know, they're not going to figure this out by the time they submit this thing to HCD in October.
Well, can we just say we call on the town council to approve the consensus decision from the planning commission to adopt the sunrise clause?
I guess I don't want it to be quite that. If you want, it's up to you guys. I wasn't looking for anything quite that prescriptive. I'm happy any way the council thinks that they can buy us some time for the other committees and the members of the public dig in, and for these other things that we don't even like, the wildfire maps and some of this other stuff, before we make final decisions. So, I mean, that's what I'm looking. I mean, that's the concept I'm trying to get at.
Basically, you say you want to buy time because we don't have all the information we need.
Yeah.
And we haven't done all the work we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you want to buy time to get additional information and to basically give some of the committees and residents, you know, basically time to, we got to find some word to put in here, achieve our housing needs.
Okay. People okay with that?
I don't know. Try to read it, see how much I made.
See what it says.
All right.
Just the last part. Just the last part.
Yeah.
Just the last part.
Okay. We recognize the need and mandate for low-income housing units. We call on the town council to buy time to get additional. Wait a minute. To get additional information and for all committees and residents to achieve our housing needs. That's a little rough. We call on the town council to, do we want to say buy time?
No, that's a funny term of phrase.
Yeah.
I would say.
Create a window of
yeah.
Okay.
I like create a window. What do you think, Terry?
I think that's okay. Or make additional time, or commit to allow for additional time to invite committees in the community to explore additional and every option to address the affordable housing needs. And I personally like affordable more than low income, but that's just my pet peeve.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, low income is a part of affordable.
No, I realize that, but I think some people react to low income in a
Yeah. No,
negative way.
I'm with you. Affordable is good because low income is one of 4 categories in affordable housing. It's only one.
Affordable housing sounds more inclusive and less charged.
Well, and
We
it
all could use
includes
more affordable housing.
Yeah, and it includes low.
Yeah, of course.
Very low, low, moderate. So it's great. It's a much better word. I'm completely in agreement.
Okay, we recognize the need and mandate for affordable housing. We call on the town council to commit to allow additional time, but then it says to allow. So I don't think we want to allow additional time to allow. Additional time for committees and residents. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. We call on the town council to create a window. No, sorry.
Do we
got
have,
rid
do
of
we
that.
want to say we call, or can we say we recommend or respectfully request or something? I don't know. I'm
John?
fine if you want to say we call on the town council, but I personally like recommend or respectfully request or something like that more than we call on them.
Encourage.
We encourage, that's polite, and yeah, we encourage the town council to make additional time, find additional time, allow for additional time for committees and residents, to explore additional and every option to address this important imperative. It's out of respect that we recognize that this is important and we're not discarding it as important. It's just we think we want to, try harder for other alternatives.
All right, this is getting messy. I should have taken it on my computer, but we encourage the town council to commit to additional time for committees and residents to explore any and all additional and every option to achieve our housing needs. That's what I have. That's a little.
Yeah, that's okay. Or
That's
affordable
okay?
housing needs.
Our affordable housing needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nona, do you want to just take a minute and type it in? We can.
Yeah,
wait.
I'd like to do that if that's okay, and then I can read it a little bit more cleanly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want, let me just get a window open here.
Yeah, you're doing the hard work of trying to, do a group edit. So we can wait for you to get it in a place you can work on it.
And the
Okay.
public talk at all?
Yeah, that would be good. That'll give me a couple of minutes.
What about lengthen the decision-making process?
I think it's important for us not to be overly prescriptive about our recommendation, because the town council knows things or has to navigate things that we don't know, and I think it's important for us to be very clear what our recommendation is, but not, again, prescriptive about how that should be implemented.
There also are a lot of people that didn't, that at the last meeting I listened to, I don't remember which meeting it was, but that were quite against the concept of dragging things out.
Yeah, and I don't think we're talking about passing the buck or dragging things out at all. And that's the opposite of what we're talking about. We're talking about, you know, we're acknowledging that a lot of good work has been done, hard work has been done. But this particular solution is super problematic for a number of very substantive reasons, objective substantive reasons, and that we're encouraging the council to make room to continue the work and to invite the committees and the community to continue the work, to see what other alternatives might be out there. And I think Craig has fairly pointed out that the additional time might reveal additional circumstances and opportunities that we just haven't had a chance to explore. And particularly if we're talking about a few years of opportunity, that at least we preserve the possibility of coming up with more better options than this particular option from our committee's perspective, which just feels horribly untenable. And it feels like it's a personal opinion, but it's not. Part of what we're trying to bring up is there are these what you have brought up, you, the community, have brought up, is that there's some objective, not subjective considerations here that are extremely problematic with this open space route. And but I think you also have reminded us that, and Craig has reminded us that just saying no is not super constructive. And we're just trying to say that we're willing to be part of a constructive, ongoing dialogue, and we believe the community is as well, to continue to solution find here.
Terry,
yeah.
I'm worrying that we're getting a little too wordy.
No, I wasn't asking Laura to write that. I mean,
I sort of liked what Nona started out with her an hour or so ago. And it doesn't have all of these little innuendos in there, but I got 25 words here. The open space advisory committee, acquisition advisory committee opposes building housing on town open space lands. The committee commits to supporting the town's efforts to achieve affordable housing needs in Portola Valley. I think I might leave it there.
my concern with being that spare, Gary, is that we're not putting in the public record why.
Pardon me?
My concern with being too spare in our words is we're missing the opportunity to put in the public record why we oppose it, as opposed to just opposing it under principle or because we're, you know, that's what we're supposed to do, because that's.
Oh, I think there was a phrase in there I would add about the value of open spaces to our town.
Can I share my screen and see if this fits your?
Hold on, let me make sure. I may have to add you as a host that you can share screen. Let me just check.
Oh, she should be able to share the screen. I could share my screen. Down
Let's
at
see
the
if
bottom.
that works.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah,
see it?
Yeah. Well, for a minute, and then it's, there we go. Yes. Excellent.
Do you see it? Okay,
Yes,
everybody take a breather and just read it. I mean, I'll type out the abbreviations, but. I think it was in good faith.
Yeah.
In good faith, yeah.
And I think you could leave the to the town out. I think it's good enough. I think it's implied in this conversation. The donations were made in good faith.
Yep.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, we're deleting words. That's always good.
Yeah.
Yep, shorter is better, less is more.
Um, Essentially, forever to me seems
Yeah, I don't
like a
think you need it.
judgment.
I don't think you need it.
I don't think you need it. Yeah, that's, yeah.
Get
I-
Put a period.
More words.
Future.
Yeah, get those two out of there. There we go.
Okay, what else?
I think you could say just explore additional options or to achieve and get out the and every. To
Okay.
explore additional options to achieve or housing needs.
Okay.
I think that's actually pretty good. It may not be as efficient as Gary would have us, but I think it's not too bad.
Okay, I can go for this.
At the last sentence.
Yeah, it seems awkward.
Sorry, I'm not part of the committee, but I think I would say whoops, where to go? On that last sentence. Oh man. Okay. My memory's not good enough to know what it said to. I was going to change one word in it that I think would have made it better, but it's gone.
Why don't you think about it for a minute? I think the sentence is awkward. We encourage the council to commit to additional time. I mean, I think what Terry was saying before, maybe Noni, you were saying before, is we commit to work with the council to explore additional options to achieve our affordable housing. And then maybe it could be we ask the council to provide some, that, you know what I mean? Like put our commitment in there and then.
That's what I was going to say. Instead of additional time, say necessary time.
Seems like a good addition.
We commit to work with the town council to
explore additional options to achieve our affordable housing. Yeah. You gotta leave the commit there, but the rest, yeah. But you lost the commit. Oh, and I knew you're right. Okay, we commit to okay.
Okay, we're rather than this whole. Yes.
Yes, and then I think you need to add a sentence after it is that we respectfully request that the council look at options. I'm struggling now, but you know, this is where we want to request the additional time, effectively. Council provide additional time or provide the needed time.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we want to cap this thing with something of, because of the importance of this, you know, this value, this value or something, but
I think it's good as it is.
okay, I'm okay with it.
Okay, take another
It's
look.
hard to do these group edits.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern is with the our committee commits to work with the town council. I'm not sure we want to suggest that the open space committee is somehow well positioned to be a source of alternatives. You know, some of the comments about, well, we need to look at, you know, ADUs or HOAs or whatever, that's not going to be open space. And so I actually prefer the last sentence in spirit more than, I know it's nice to personalize it and say, we commit to work with the town council. But I worry that that implies somehow that, you know, there's something open space is going to do to fix this problem. And I think what we're really saying is open space is not unlikely to be the source of the solution to this problem.
So what if we just added to the last sentence, the provide the needed time to explore additional options to achieve our affordable housing needs?
I like that better, and I would delete the we commit to work with the town council part.
Yeah,
Not because of course we will.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't want to imply that after we say we strongly oppose this, we go, but we will work with you to, you know, help find a solution. It's like, well,
that's good. I'm with you. A bunch of other committees are going to be doing a bunch of this work too.
Yeah.
So no, I think it was taking the last half of the second to the last sentence and adding it to the end of the last sentence. So if you go in the second to the last sentence where it starts with explore,
if
you just took from there to the period and then added that on the end of the last sentence.
Wait a minute.
No, but I'm talking about.
Well, what about the sentence I just added? Does that do that or not?
I like that.
That's fine. And then just delete both the other ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's even shorter.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward, plain English.
Okay. Terry, as chair, you should be the one who submits this to the town, I believe.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
But I guess I would begin by saying I move to recommend this as the advisory committee's a statement to the council on the housing element proposal.
Second.
Great. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Unanimously approved. Good work. Thank you, folks.
It'll make John happy.
Good job. I'm going to bed.
Well, let me say though, we really appreciate, John, your attendance and your guidance tonight. It's very helpful. And let me also say, we appreciate the engagement of our community members, many or all of whom have chimed in at various points tonight and whose comments we appreciate. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support. This is probably not the end, but still an important step in our dialogue and work towards, you know, a better solution. And I think I can safely say on behalf of the committee, we appreciate the spirit and the actual effort that you all have put in to help us move in a direction that I think feels like it makes sense to all of us, I think. And we appreciate the opportunity to represent you in this important work. Okay.
Okay.
We ready for a motion to adjourn?
Well, can we just do one last thing, which is I'd like to share my screen again and have Terry take a screenshot so that we're done and there's no doubt that what goes in is what we agreed on.
Can you just send it to me?
I can, but is
No,
it
we
what
just
we want to do,
looked
or
at
do you
it
want to just take a
and approved it.
screenshot? I know, I just wanted to make sure no one thinks it got changed at
No,
all.
I don't think that. So
All right.
anyway.
All right, I will do that.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
I need to second. Okay. I think we all agree to adjourn. I want to say thank you again to my committee colleagues and to our community members. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Nice work, by the way.
Thank you, Terry, for your
good job,
great
Terry.
leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, good meeting.
Good job, folks.
For sure. No, I'll watch for your email.